Welcome to Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling. I'm your host, Curtis Smith. Every week on this podcast, we talk about all things mental health, sometimes stress or anxiety. Perhaps you're burned out. Well, this is the podcast for you. We sit down with the wonderful counselors at Crosswinds Counseling and have a great conversation every week. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling, our weekly podcast. I'm your host, Curtis Smith, and joining us today for the first time is Siearah Curry.
Yes.
One of the tremendous counselors here at Crosswinds Counseling. Siearah, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Siearah was recently on maternity leave.
Yes.
And congratulations.
Thank
you
you.
are now the mother of two.
Yes.
And back into the full swing of counseling.
Yes.
So how's life?
Busy.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yes. I have a daughter that's 2 and one that's 2 months.
Wow.
So, yes.
Yeah. So you have your hands full.
I do.
At home and at work.
Yes.
Today we're going to talk about one of the things that keeps your hands full at work, and that is the topic of self-care. And Siearah, I think this is a phrase, a topic that has become kind of a buzzword in the last few years. What is self-care, and how can we go about being better at it?
Pretty much self-care is just taking care of your physical, mental, and emotional needs. It involves like making a lot of boundaries and just to reduce the stress and everything. So parents, moms, mostly I would say moms, because we do have a tendency to be the nurturers and everything. We do stink at it quite a bit because we feel like we need to care for everybody and not ourselves.
Yeah, I think this is true. I've heard this is true of a lot of professions like counselors and nurses and people that focus most of their time and energy on taking care of others. Moms certainly fall into that category. What is it about those people who are so focused on others that cause them to just shirk their own responsibilities and taking care of themselves? Why does that happen so much?
I think it's individualized, honestly. I mean, I think it's mostly due to the fact there's a lot of guilt, feeling like when we put ourselves first, we shouldn't because we're not supposed to.
Yeah.
So, and I think definitely, like you mentioned, in the caring professions, it's very common.
Yeah.
Because we are super busy and, we want to take care of all the people, take care of all the needs that aren't being met, and we sometimes forget us.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. Let's talk about how prevalent self-care is and the lack of it, because I feel like it's something you could probably address with every client you see, whether they have anxiety or depression, whether they're in a helpful profession or not. Being aware of our own needs and taking care of ourselves is something that we're probably all in need of being at least a little better at, right?
Yes. We definitely all need to be a little better at it. I think when it comes to, any type of mental health issue or disorder or anything, it's pretty bold to come and ask for help. And when they come in for therapy and they sit and they start uncovering all that stuff, self-care becomes even more prevalent, because if they aren't caring for themselves, the emotions that they're uncovering that they may have been pushing down for years is going to get the best of them. And I think sometimes you find that with depression, with anxiety, it does get worse before it gets better. And when it gets worse, it's like, oh my gosh, why is this getting worse? And I think that's when you fall into, like I tell my clients, do something that makes you happy. Do something that takes care of you. And it'll make it a little easier to handle.
What other tips do you have for people who, when they come in, you see right off the bat, well, they're not taking care of themselves, and I'm going to have to address the lack of self-care that's going on. Besides saying do something that makes you feel happy, what other tips, what other advice would you have for somebody who's struggling with self-care?
I would say being open, if they're with somebody, like with their partner and stuff, being open with them about kind of where they're at emotionally And also, in order to set boundaries, you have to like uncover why you don't have them in the first place. So you have to address what were boundaries like in their household, what are boundaries like from their childhood, and what kind of examples they were set. So I think once you kind of figure that out, it's a lot easier to really target what self-care they need to do.
And that probably varies from person to person as
It does.
well. Some of us are introverts. Some of us are extroverts. Some people might need to make sure they carve out alone time, to make sure that they spend time by themselves, enjoying peace and quiet. And that might not be that healthy for some people.
Yes.
Some people need to make sure they're getting around other people and plugged into other adults and having the kind of social interactions. So a lot of it is probably just knowing yourself. How do you help somebody to see themselves, to get to know themselves at a deeper level so that they know what are the right things for them to be doing to provide the self-care they need?
Exploring, kind of exploring why they're coming in, and also exploring what, I know a couple clients have come to me and were like, well, I miss my happy self. Okay, well, what does the happy self look like? Or I miss how I used to be. Okay, well, what was your used to be? So more exploring into what their personal goal is and what they once, when they felt really healthy, what were they doing? What were they saying? Those kind of things.
Is it easy to connect those functions, those things? Here's what you were doing. Here's how you felt. So let's get back to doing some of those things. Or is it often does it exist at a deeper, more core level?
It definitely is a deeper core level. It comes down to where did the break happen, and kind of figuring out when that break happened, what was going on, what kind of things in your life, or what areas of your personal self did it start targeting that broke you down to the point where you can't take care of yourself, or you can't find your way back to you, kind of thing. So it is definitely diving into where the break happened. And when I say break, I mean more just like the hurt, like where the hurt is, because we all have different hurts. So
yeah. At the root of it, though, I suppose for a lot of us, self-care is at the root of those hurts. If we're not taking care of ourselves, how are we going to be able to function in our marriages, in our friendships, in our jobs? It can feel selfish. I get that. But we have to take time to take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that is also going to help heal yourself too. I mean, when it comes to talking about boundaries, when it comes to talking about self-care, it's a really, you have to be really careful with that, because sometimes people come in and they don't really feel like they can take care of themselves. If that's based off of the fact that they've been hurt in some way, or if it's based off the fact that they don't have time. I mean, yeah.
Not able to take care of themselves. I'm no counselor. I say that almost every podcast because I want to be clear about that. But if someone were to say that to me, man, that would feel overwhelming to me. I would be lost on even where to go with them.
Yeah.
So when someone says that to you, a professional counselor, how do you react? How do you respond? How do you get them? That seems like a huge mountain to get over before you can even make progress with them. How do you start to get over that mountain?
I mean, being very specific on kind of what they're coming in for, what they're wanting to work on, but also just honestly empathizing with them and being present with them and acknowledging the fact that they're not too much. Because I think when it comes to the idea of self-care, a lot of people think that they're too much for themselves, too much for others. And part of self-care is also asking for help. And if that's asking your partner for help, or if that's asking your parents for help, like whatever it is, I think it is like, if they don't feel like they can or they deserve it, then it's a whole lot of like figuring out, okay, well, why don't you feel like this? Or really empathizing with them of like, I'm here, I see you, like, you're okay, you aren't too much. That's a lot of what I find I do is you're not too much.
You're not too much.
You're not too much.
What does that mean? So people come in with this idea that they're too much.
Yeah, like their emotions are just too big for anyone to handle.
Got it.
Specifically emotions. And I think sometimes you get big personalities and they also question like, well, I'm just too big of a person for others. And it's like, no, you're not. You're fine. We're fine. Like that kind of thing.
And no matter who you are, introvert, extrovert, too big of a personality, a small little personality, we all have to take care of ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that once you really hit make them feel seen, make them feel heard, then self-care kind of naturally falls into that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Siearah, thanks. I know it's a big topic. It's one of the many things that you can dive into with the great counselors here at Crosswinds, like Siearah. You can find them all on the website at crosswindscounseling.org. Not only can you find the counselors there and read about their bios and try to figure out who might be a good fit for you, but you can schedule with them right there online. So go to the website, crosswindscounseling.org, and check it out. And of course, you can keep checking out the podcast every week. We're glad that you were with us today. Siearah, thanks for joining us today as well. We'll see you next week on the podcast. Thanks for watching Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get more of our podcasts. And you can comment in the section below. Perhaps you could share what you'd like us to discuss in future episodes. We've got new episodes coming out every week. So we'll see you next time on Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling.